Hi everyone. Today's book is going to be a trip back to that last epoch of the sailing era. And it is The Duchess and the Captain's Wife. The Herzogin Cecilie and Her Circle. Now that is a bit of a mouthful, but the Herzogin Cecilie, which translates from German as either Crown Princess or Duchess Cecilie, was, as you can see, one of the last great sailing ships of the 20th century. A big, beautiful, four-masted sailing bark. This ship was commanded by Captain Sven Ericksson, and he married Pamela Born, who, as per the title, became Pamela Ericksson. And she documented their voyages together and travelled with him while he captained the Herzogin Cecilie between Finland, Mariehamn, down through to such exotic ports as Port Lincoln or Wallaroo in South Australia. Between the 1870s and the 1940s, there was a small window where sailing ships could operate at a profit on some cargo runs, be it loading jute, nitrates, or as it eventually narrowed down to grain from South Australia. The Herzogin Cecilie is one of the best documented sailing ships, with plenty of books written about it, almost as much as the Cadillac even. One of the reasons is that not only did the captain's wife write a bestseller about her voyages on board, but as well other passengers documented their trips on that last great era of sail. And the ship came to represent, the passing of an era and a confirmation that there was a romantic element to the age of sail, when really the hard reality was it was just simply ship owners and captains trying to make a profit in the only way that they could. Having said that, small segue, we're going to tack over and just have a look at two quick books. If you are interested in a more holistic view of the Herzogin Cecilie that looks at its life, its death, crew, and fleet, then check out both Herzogin Cecilie by Neil Cormack and Herzogin Cecilie by Basil Greenhill and John Hackman. As I said, both of these books essentially look at the ship from a more holistic and traditional point of view. Life, death, career, highlights, wrecking, and everything in between. But changing tack again, back to the actual book we're going to review. So, why another book about the Herzogin Cecilie? Well, it just turns out that a cache of beautiful photos taken by the captain's wife were discovered and restored, and they offer a beautiful insight into the workings of a sailing ship during this era. The first third of this book is taken up by a summary of the life of the ship, the life of the captain, his wife, and their ship owner, Gustav Eriksson, in the Åland Islands in Finland. And anyone who knows anything about sailing ships, particularly in this era, will know that Gustav Eriksson was famous for micromanaging his captains. It's a real art form, and when you read his letters, when taken out of context, it's quite hilarious. He would recommend that his captains only buy eggs and bacon to feed their passengers and not get luxuries like asparagus and lobster. Or he would instruct where the crew would be positioned so that when customs would come over to check on the ship, conveniently the crew would be in a position where they can miss certain areas. But looking back at it through the views of a ship owner really just comes down to practicality. This man just wanted to generate a profit, and the only way to do that was to keep costs down. This was a sailing ship company in the 1930s during a worldwide depression. All those worries, though, seem far away when you look at the photos, and the photos occupy the remaining 2/3 of this book, with captions providing context to each of them. And you get a beautiful sensation of what it was like to travel on the Herzogin Cecilie in the 1930s. Through these photos, we get a great sense of what it was like to travel and be a crew member on the Herzogin Cecilie in the 1930s. Life was tough, it certainly wasn't romantic, but there's a certain sweetness that comes out in the photos because Pamela was able to capture the humanity of the crew and the day-to-day reality of people working on a hard-working sailing ship, which you can see in the photos up there. The photos cover the voyages, the beautiful candid moments shared by the crew, and as well it is complemented by some additional photos that cover the tragic end of this ship. The Herzogin Cecilie ran aground, it was refloated, towed over to Stairhole Bay, and unfortunately salvage was not possible and the ship ended up being pounded to pieces and sunk. So there's a sense of Greek tragedy to this whole thing, and part of that is conveyed in this book. The text is beautifully translated, and the personality of Pamela and everyone that she came in contact with radiates from the pages. It's quite beautiful. I almost wish that I had done this review during Valentine's Day because there's just so much emotion that comes out of these words. The photos, expertly framed, beautifully restored, and have a wonderful grainy texture to it, as you would be seeing up here, which gives us not only a sense of immediacy, but also a sense of the era in which these men and women lived and worked. For those who are interested in the sailing ship era, particularly in that final epoch, and who want a different perspective, separate from the standard facts and figures, voyage dates, construction, end dates, etc., then this book comes highly recommended. For me, I appreciated reading about life on a sailing ship from a very different perspective. The photos are beautiful, and feeling the personalities come through is an experience quite separate from other standard shipping histories. And for that, this book is a for captain's hats. If you want to understand what life was like from the perspective of a captain's wife, while joining her husband on a sailing ship in the 1930s, then this book is a fantastic insight into that. For those who just want to see great black and white photos of sailing ships and crew in action, this is also great. The photos are fantastic, as no doubt you're seeing. And the shots of the ship aground and sinking are equally painful. However, for those who are more interested on the technical side of things, who prefer deck plans, sailing configurations, then check out the other two books that I mentioned earlier by Cormac, Greenhill and Hackman. They will be more for you. So do check it out, have a read, fall in love with an era that is now gone. So until next time, happy reading, happy sailing, and until then, enjoy.